April 8, 1943, 09:00 hours. A rain-drenched trench somewhere beyond Catania, Sicily. Private Thomas Tommy Miller forced his muddy boot further into the water-saturated soil. The cold had long ago penetrated the leather, reaching the bone. The unending moisture of the Mediterranean campaign was not merely sapping his morale, it was ruining his equipment. Tommy's boots, his rifle sling, his leather satchel, all were casualties of the constant wet. Leather that decayed became rigid and split, losing all protective function. A damaged boot meant frostbite and paralysis. A cracked rifle sling meant fumbling a weapon during a firefight. The unseen enemy of the Allied forces was not always the opposing soldier. It was the water, the mud, and the resulting deterioration. The magnitude of the damage was shocking. In the campaigns in North Africa, Italy, and later the torrential rains of the European advance, the Allied armies were losing equipment faster to rot and mildew than to enemy fire. Boots in particular were an enormous and crippling drain on logistical resources. They were the most vital piece of equipment, and they were failing almost every day. Reports from the front lines frequently noted that a new pair of leather boots, even treated with available commercial compounds, had a lifespan measured in only weeks in the relentless soaking environment of the European theater. The sheer amount of replacement gear required was creating a severe choke point in the supply chain back to North America, thousands of miles removed from the mud and the despair. In the clean, sterile laboratories of Canada's National Research Council, NRC, in Ottawa, a group of dedicated scientists was battling a completely different problem. Ice. The mission was urgent. The Royal Canadian Air Force ARF needed an effective non-corrosive de-icing agent for aircraft battery terminals. The failure of batteries in freezing conditions was causing crashes and disrupting critical reconnaissance missions. The fate of Canadian pilots often depended on this seemingly minor chemical issue. Leading the team was Dr. Kenneth Smith, a young chemist whose specialty was not leather, but advanced aerospace compounds for months. Dr. Smith and his team mixed, heated, and filtered innumerable substances. They were targeting a crystalline structure that could effectively lower the freezing point of residual moisture on the terminals without harming the metal. They failed again and again. Every compound they created either corroded the metal, solidified too rapidly, or simply lacked the required thermal properties for high-altitude use. The pressure was intensifying, and the NRC directors were becoming impatient with the absence of results. One night, after weeks of relentless, fruitless experimentation, Dr. Smith, irritated and exhausted, attempted a complex mixture involving mineral oils, paraffin waxes, and various fatty acids. A desperate Hail Mary effort to create a unique non-aqueous crystalline base that might finally solve the issue. The reaction was a catastrophe. Instead of producing a clear, low-freeze liquid suitable for battery terminals, the chemical process yielded a thick semi-solid waxy paste. It was dark, sticky, completely impervious to water, and critically it lacked the thermal properties required for de-icing. It was utterly useless for high-altitude aviation. Dr. Smith recorded the failure, labeled the compound NRC 194, music, F for failure, and discarded it. It was a waste of costly wartime materials, a total defeat in the pursuit of high-altitude technology. But war is a vast, chaotic machine, and sometimes the answer to one problem is concealed within the failure of another. At the same time, a desperate logistical memo was circulating from the Quartermaster General's office detailing the catastrophic loss of leather equipment. The cost of replacing millions of boots and leather goods was becoming unsustainable. Rising into the millions of dollars when adjusted for today's inflation, the military required a simple, field-deployable waterproofing solution, something that could restore and protect leather in the humid, tropical, and muddy environments of the war. The existing solutions were painfully inadequate. Traditional leather dressings were often based on animal fats or simple oils which either washed out too quickly, turned rancid in the heat, or worse, sealed the leather pores too tightly, causing it to dry out and split after repeated exposure to water. The military needed a compound that was both a preservative and an impenetrable shield. The Quartermaster Corps sent a request to the NRC. Can you supply any compound, however crude, that might extend the life of leather by preventing water saturation and decay? The request landed on the desk of Dr. Smith's supervisor, who, recalling the chemist's recent, highly publicized failure, decided on a whim to examine NRC 1942 in an act of desperation, checking every shelf for a possible answer. The test results were astonishing. The thick waxy paste that had failed to save a single battery terminal was a miracle for leather. Its unique blend of mineral oils and synthesized waxes delivered deep nourishment to the material, replacing the natural oils lost during tanning and exposure. Moreover, its dense, non-porous structure formed an impermeable barrier against water without suffocating the leather. When applied generously to a rotting, rigid boot, the leather became supple, waterproof, and resilient. The useless compound had found its true purpose, resolving a logistical crisis that was quietly eroding the Allied war effort, swiftly dubbed dubbing, a name derived from an ancient traditional leather treatment term, dubbing, and the compound was rushed into large-scale production. The logistical urgency was immediate. Millions of small, simple tins of dubbin were packed and shipped to every Allied theater of war, from the shores of Sicily to the jungles of Burma. The fate of Private Tommy Miller's boots, and the logistical stability of the entire Allied force, would soon rest on the accidental paste discovered in an Ottawa laboratory. This modest tin of paste, the outcome of a scientific failure, was about to become one of the most cost-effective and vital inventions of the Second World War. By early 1944, in the supply depots of the Allied Expeditionary Force in England, the scientific failure of Dr. Kenneth Smith had, by the opening months of 1944, transformed into a logistical success story. The thick, waxy compound, now rebranded simply as dubbin, had shifted from an experimental anomaly in an Ottawa lab to a mass-produced, indispensable element of the Allied supply chain. Its primary impact was measured not in firepower, but in money saved and operational readiness preserved. The economic strain faced by the Quartermaster Corps was enormous. Before the widespread adoption of dubbin, the replacement rate for leather boots and equipment in the Mediterranean and North Atlantic theaters was climbing to unsustainable levels. A single pair of boots might survive less than a month in the corrosive mud of the Italian coastline, and replacing millions of such items generated astronomical costs in materials, manufacturing time, and, critically, shipping tonnage across the U-boat-infested Atlantic. Dubbin delivered an immediate, inexpensive, and highly efficient solution. The cost of one tin of dubbin was trivial compared to the expense of producing and transporting a replacement boot. Moreover, the compound extended the life of a pair of boots from mere weeks to several months, dramatically reducing demand on factories back home. Logisticians rapidly grasped the simple, powerful arithmetic. A small tin of Canadian paste was saving the Allies millions. This compound's revolutionary character lay in its chemical makeup. Unlike traditional animal fat-based greases, dubbin contained a blend of petroleum derivatives and refined waxes that did not merely sit on the surface of the leather. It penetrated the fibers, rendering the material genuinely waterproof and rot-resistant, while still allowing the leather to breathe just enough to prevent the destructive internal drying and cracking that plagued older treatments. The shift from laboratory to front line required a massive educational effort. Small tins of dubbin were packaged with clear, concise instructions and issued to every soldier, sailor, and airman. The simple act of application became a mandatory element of field maintenance. Each night after slogging through the mire, soldiers like Private Tommy Miller spent precious minutes cleaning their leather gear and carefully rubbing in the dark waxy paste. This routine fostered deep appreciation among the troops for the compound. They observed firsthand that their boots stayed flexible and dry, and their leather rifle slings, essential for accurate long-range shooting, did not stretch or crack, maintaining functional reliability. Dubbin moved beyond being simple waterproofing. It became a symbol of dependability in a world defined by chaos and decay. The effect was perhaps felt most strongly in the infantry. The rifle, the primary tool of the infantryman, depended on leather slings and pouches. Constant exposure to rain and humidity caused untreated leather to mildew and stretch, leading to mechanical failure and inaccuracy. Dubbin not only safeguarded the leather, but when applied to metal components of the rifle, especially internal mechanisms within the stock where rust could develop, it provided an added layer of protection, preventing corrosion and fouling. The paste, originally intended for boots, quickly evolved into an all-purpose field protective agent. Additionally, the compound solved an equally critical problem for the Quartermaster Corps in the Pacific Theater, in the humid tropical environments of the South Pacific where mold and fungus could consume a pair of boots overnight. Dubbin's stable chemical structure resisted biological attack. It functioned as a fungicide as well as a waterproofing agent, proving its value worldwide. From the frozen mud of the Ardennes to the sweltering heat of Guadalcanal, senior Allied officers began publicly acknowledging the compound's contribution. General George S. Patton, whose armored divisions relied on rapid, continuous movement through all weather, frequently stressed the importance of preventative maintenance. The durability of his tank crew's leather helmets and the integrity of jeep seats, all rigorously waterproofed with Dubin, directly enhanced the overall effectiveness of his forces. The unexpected paste became a key factor in Patton's logistical momentum. The story of Dubin is the story of how a small, seemingly useless technical failure solved a vast systemic military problem. It was a quiet triumph of material science, demonstrating that the most pivotal victories in war are sometimes achieved not on the battlefield, but in the laboratory, and measured not in territory gained, but in equipment preserved and lives made marginally safer and more bearable. The logistical miracle was complete, but the full, enduring legacy of the Canadian scientist's accidental paste had yet to be revealed. By mid-1944, in the hedgerows of Normandy, France, following the D-Day landings, the war in Europe became a grim, grinding struggle fought in the tight, muddy confines of the Norman bocage, the dense network of hedgerows. The conditions were ideal for warfare, but disastrous for equipment and lethal to the health of the foot soldier. This environment became the true proving ground for the accidental Canadian paste, Dubin. Private Tommy Miller, now fighting in France, no longer viewed his daily ritual of applying Dubin as a mere chore imposed by the quartermaster. It had become an essential act of self-preservation. The constant dampness and lack of proper rotation meant soldiers' feet were often soaked for days at a time, leading to a crippling medical condition known as trench foot. Trench foot was not simply discomfort. It was a non-freezing cold injury that caused numbness, pain, and eventually, if untreated, gangrene and amputation. It was a massive medical burden on the front lines, removing thousands of men from combat without a single shot fired. The primary defense was straightforward. Keep the feet dry. Here, Dubin played an invaluable, life-saving role. By forming an impermeable seal on the leather of the combat boot, it prevented water from saturating the material and drawing moisture toward the foot. While foot rotation and sock changes remained essential protocols, Dubin served as the critical first line of defense, making boots genuinely water-resistant in conditions where earlier compounds had failed spectacularly. Reports from medical officers confirmed a dramatic reduction in trench foot cases across units where Dubin application was strictly enforced. Officers recognized that the cost of treating, evacuating, and replacing a soldier disabled by trench foot was exponentially greater than the price of a tin of paste. Dubin was not merely saving money. It was keeping men combat ready. The paste's usefulness extended far beyond boots. In the vast, complex machinery of military operations, leather remained essential for communication, weaponry, and transport. Radio operators used leather cases to shield sensitive equipment. Drivers relied on leather straps and covers for vehicle components, and snipers depended on meticulously maintained leather slings for their rifles. In the humid, fungal environment of the Pacific Theater, the challenge was different but equally severe. Here the enemy was mold and mildew, capable of consuming leather overnight and severely damaging optics in metal gear. Dubin's chemical stability and antifungal properties made it the compound of choice. Soldiers in the jungle applied it to everything: leather holsters, binocular cases, even to lubricate and protect wooden rifle stocks against swelling and cracking. The product earned a quiet, almost legendary reputation among the troops. It was the humble, universally used item that never ran out, never failed, and was always available to solve a small but critical problem. It was often traded for cigarettes, used as a temporary repair sealant, or even applied to protect wounds from infection in desperate moments of a firefight, a true testament to its versatility and availability. The story of Dubin is therefore a microcosm of the war itself, a colossal conflict won through the combined effort of massive industrial capacity and countless small acts of maintenance and ingenuity. The accidental failure of a Canadian scientist intended to solve an aviation problem ultimately became the foot soldier's closest ally, fighting the war against rot, mold, and misery in every trench and foxhole across the globe. By late 1944, as Allied forces advanced toward Germany, Dubin was no longer an experimental paste. It had become ingrained military culture. Every recruit was taught its value, and every veteran relied on it implicitly. It stood as a testament to the power of practical science, often hidden behind headlines, that ultimately contributed to the enduring operational capability of the entire Allied fighting force. Post-war era 1945 and beyond. The laboratories of the National Research Council, Ottawa. The war concluded, the victory commemorated, and the attention of the world shifted from mere survival back to prosperity. For Dr. Kenneth Smith and the scientists at the NRC, the frantic tempo of wartime research eased. Yet the accidental compound they had produced, the failure known as NRC 1943, had earned a lasting, if understated, place in history. Dubin had fulfilled its wartime role flawlessly. It had saved the Allied forces millions of dollars in equipment replacement expenses, a sum that, when fully calculated by the Quartermaster Corps, was staggering. More importantly, it had sustained the operational readiness of infantry units by sharply reducing cases of trench foot and safeguarding the integrity of vital gear in every theater of war. However, the true legacy of Dubin was not recorded in wartime balance sheets, but in its post-war endurance. As millions of soldiers returned home, they carried with them a habit, the careful maintenance of leather ingrained by years of daily dubbing application. They understood that no other compound protected their leather as dependably. This enormous, soldier-driven demand ensured that Dubin was swiftly adapted for the consumer market. Companies were authorized by the Canadian government to manufacture the compound, initially following the exact wartime formula. Suddenly, the paste designed to rescue boots from the mud of Normandy was being used to shield hiking boots, work boots, saddles, and civilian leather goods throughout North America and Europe. It transformed the leather care market, establishing a new benchmark for waterproofing and preservation that commercial products had previously failed to achieve. The accidental success of Dubin also exerted a significant influence on material science. It underscored the effectiveness of petroleum-based waxes and synthetic compounds over traditional animal fats for deep leather penetration and long-term protection. This insight opened the door to future developments in protective coatings and durable military-grade materials, proving that a high-tech failure in one discipline could generate a practical, world-changing solution in another. The story of Dubin became a textbook case of scientific serendipity, the fortunate accident. It demonstrated that amid the disorder of research, failure is not always a dead end, but sometimes a crucial misstep that unlocks an entirely unexpected path. The war had created the urgent necessity, and the failure to de-ice a battery had delivered the perfect simple answer. Dr. Smith and his team received quiet acknowledgement for their contribution. They never pursued fame, but their compound became an enduring symbol of the vast, complex, and often anonymous scientific effort required to win the war. They showed that the war machine was built not only by massive tanks and bombers, but also by the modest, uncelebrated innovation contained in a small tin of paste. The most enduring lesson is the powerful realization that in any high-stakes endeavor, whether war, commerce, or even personal growth, the greatest dangers are often the most ordinary: decay, inefficiency, and neglect. Dubin was a triumph over entropy, over the relentless forces of nature that constantly threatened to degrade and destroy. It taught the world that a simple preventative measure, applied consistently, could save millions in costs and preserve thousands of lives in operational effectiveness. Dubin, the accidental paste, remains in use today, a testament to its lasting effectiveness and its quiet, powerful legacy. It stands as a constant reminder that some of the most life-saving discoveries emerge from experiments once dismissed as foolish or useless. If you found the story of this accidental paste compelling, there are countless other brilliant, hidden innovations from World War II that merit recognition. Show your support for uncovering these classified histories by hitting that subscribe button right now. Your support helps us share the stories of the quiet heroes. The wartime lessons learned by the Quartermaster Corps about preventative maintenance, inspired by Dubin's success, became standard practice across the US and Canadian militaries. The emphasis shifted from expensive replacement to mandatory proactive preservation. This philosophy, born from the urgent need to protect boots in the mud, later shaped maintenance protocols for everything from aircraft to vehicles, demonstrating that the humble paste had fundamentally altered the logistical mindset of the modern military. Ultimately, the tale of the Canadian scientists and their accidental paste is one of history's great ironies. They failed to save a few batteries from ice, but through that failure they succeeded in saving millions in equipment and keeping millions of soldiers' feet safe from deadly mud. What other useless or accidental inventions from history do you believe had the greatest impact on the world? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below.